I don't think this video is going to win me any friends. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am going to piss off a lot of people by sharing some of my bookish unpopular opinions. We're going to focus on that last word there because these are just my opinion. These are the things that I think about books. If it's something that you think also, great. If it's something that you vehemently disagree with, also great. Everybody reads the same book differently. Everybody has completely different reading tastes to the next person. And what might be this person's trash is the next person's treasure. Please don't hate me. My first really unpopular opinion is that I do not enjoy fantasy books. I feel like that makes me quite an outlier on BookTube because I have seen so many people on BookTube who absolutely adore fantasy. They worship the ground the fantasy writers walk on. They are obsessed with getting pre-orders for the next biggest fantasy series. They're talking all about Shadow and Bone series on Netflix at the moment. And it's just not my thing. It's just not my thing. That isn't to say that I haven't tried to read a fantasy book. I gave Six of Crows, I think 3 times before I just kind of caved and said that this isn't the kind of thing that I am enjoying. This isn't the kind of thing that I like reading. I'm going to give this to a better home where I know that the reader is going to absolutely love it. It is definitely their thing and it's definitely going to be picked up and cherished by this person. It's just not my thing. I believe that hype pays off. Sometimes hype does pay off. It doesn't happen all the time, and there are a couple of books that have been really overhyped, really talked about, really lauded by the BookTube community, and they just haven't hit the mark for me. We'll talk about the Six of Crows duology, we'll talk about the Shadow and Bone series, the Grishaverse books, I think they're called. Loads of fantasy books basically don't pay off with the hype for me. But there are 2 that stand out in my mind right now where I can honestly tell you I picked them up because of the hype, and I have absolutely 0 regrets about doing that. The first one on that list is Angie Thomas's The Hate U Give. It is one of the most powerful books I think I have ever read. I am right now in the middle of a reread of it, and I can tell you that it hits so much harder, so much deeper the second time reading it when you're aware of everything that has happened in the US within the last couple of months. So reading it at the moment is definitely hitting a lot harder than it did the first time. The second book on that list is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I admit, I saw so many people talk about it, I was very skeptical. I went in, I tried to keep an open mind, I tried to not think about how many people on BookTube were loving it. I tried to just read it for my own sake, for my own enjoyment. I went on a kind of week-long discovery of Central Europe. So I went to a couple of places around Central Europe for a couple of days. I touched down in Vienna on the very first day, having started the book on my Kindle on the plane there, and instantly went to find a cafe to finish it because I could not put that book down. For me, those 2 books absolutely live up to the hype that they've garnered. Some people may agree with me on this one. Some people might be kind of halfway to agreeing, and some people might be completely on the other side altogether. But I think that ebooks and audiobooks absolutely count as reading and should absolutely count to your reading goal if you have one for the year. For a lot of people, audiobooks and ebooks are the only way that they can take a book in. There's a lot of people who, for whatever reason, can't pick up a physical book at the moment. They can't make the time for a physical book in their day. They can't physically hold a physical book. They can't read a physical book at the moment. So to sit there and say, well, I don't think that this audiobook that you have put the time into reading, that you have listened to, that you've absorbed the story, that you have formed opinions on the characters, on the settings, on what happens in the story, to sit and say to them that you don't think that that counts as reading, I really disagree with that on a very fundamental level, that they've still read the book. They've still taken in the information. It might not be in a very traditional sense that people will think about when they're thinking about how you read a book. But for me, it's still absolutely reading and it still absolutely counts. I didn't like To Kill a Mockingbird. I'm not saying that just off the bat. I think I've tried to read it about 4 times. And I just could not get grasped by the story. I don't know if it was the writing style. I don't know what was the problem with it. It just wasn't my kind of book. Like fantasy, like sci-fi, like any kind of genre about that, there was just something about it that it just wasn't my kind of story. Maybe I need to try it in a different format. I need to try it as an audiobook, for example, or try it on my Kindle. Maybe shaking up how I'm experiencing it might make a difference to how I'm enjoying it. But physically, it's not my kind of book. I don't think the classics should be on school curriculums. There are so many great books that have been published within the last 20 or so years that are so relevant to what teenagers are going through at the moment. They're so relevant to our world as a whole. I've got a list of them in a separate video that I'm going to link for you up here. But there are so many other books that you could absolutely form really well thought out, really well planned out, really well discussive questions that you can put onto any kind of exam paper out there. There is so much you can discuss from so many books, and not just young adult fiction. There is a plethora of non-fiction out there. There are traditionally adult fiction books that you could put in. I know that on the Leaving Cert curriculum, which is the end of school exams in Ireland over the last few years, books like Room have been put on the curriculum. Books like Circle of Friends have been put on the curriculum. Books like The Handmaid's Tale have been put on the curriculum. And there's so much that you can discuss even just from those. I would absolutely love to see some newer books and newer titles and newer names to be put on the curriculums too. Sometimes, only sometimes, not all the time, the film is better than the book. Okay, that's not to say that there aren't some absolutely trash book adaptations out there. But there are some instances where I have genuinely come out of the cinema or turned my laptop off or whatever way I'm watching it and sat down and had a think and just went, I think that was better than the source material. And it doesn't happen very often, but when it happens, you know that you're onto something magic here. Something that really stands out for me as a fantastic adaptation of an also fantastic book is one of my favorite books of all time, The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. There's so much warmth that Jeffrey Rush brings to the character of Hans Huberman. I really loved how Sophie Nélisse plays the innocence of Liesel, and I definitely have to give snaps to Emily Watson, who brought the character of Rosa Huberman to life. It's one of my favourite film adaptations. I watched it first time in a hotel in Dublin by myself, and I was really glad that I was by myself because I absolutely cried my eyes out at the end of the adaptation. It's one of my favourite films. It's one of my favourite books, and I was really, really glad that for the whole, the adaptation stayed really true to the book and didn't stray too far away from it, didn't add anything in that shouldn't have been added in my opinion. I just thought it was such a great adaptation. I think I mentioned this in my NetGalley 101 video, but I am very staunchly of the opinion that NetGalley, which is a book reviewing platform, should only be used by people who, in some capacity or other, professionally review books. So we're talking about bloggers, we're talking about booktubers like myself, booksellers, librarians, people like that who have a genuine influence in the book world, whose opinions you might come to hearing about a new book that you're not 100% sure about, but you know that this person reads roughly similar to what you would enjoy and understand. If you're just going to Karen, who lives down the road and reads a book every now and then with a cup of coffee after watching Coronation Street, you can take her words into account, of course, but I don't think it should have as much weight as Marion, who has been working in a bookshop for 5 years and knows what to look for in the next book that you're going to read and can definitely recommend you maybe 5 or 6 different books in the same category that you would really love because you loved this one. My final opinion is a bit of a strange one. I don't think that book adaptations, if it's a series for example, should be taken further than what's originally in the book. I am very much a canon follower. If you tell me that something happened in the book and that it is canon to what happens in the book, fantastic. I'm all over it. I'm on board. If it's any kind of an adaptation where it goes further than what's on the written page, completely out of the realm of what was on the written page before that, I'm not such a big fan and I'm not on board. It's the main reason why I watched the first series of Big Little Lies and I loved the first series of Big Little Lies, but I haven't gone anywhere near the second series because in my head, this isn't definitely what's happened. This is just speculation. I want to see the concrete facts. I want to see exactly what happened. It could stem from my journalistic background. Who knows? There is a list of all of the unpopular bookish opinions that I hold dear. What are some unpopular opinions that you have about books? Or do you agree with any of the ones that I've hit here? Or do you completely disagree with me? Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.